In the desolate darkness of Heather's home, a shadowy veil draped over her fragile mind. Agoraphobic and plagued by insomnia, she roamed the labyrinth of her own thoughts, untethered from reality. Days bled into nights, the concept of time a distant memory, and Heather found herself adrift in a sea of confusion. Her own identity had become a mere whisper, lost amidst the fog of uncertainty. Fragments of her past eluded her grasp, leaving her to question how she had arrived in this forsaken place. Only her name, etched into every wall, remained a thread connecting her to a world she could no longer comprehend. But it was not solitude that plagued Heather's existence. Shadows, ethereal and malicious, lurked in the corners of her perception. They whispered dreadful secrets, their voices like venomous serpents, enticing her to descend into the forbidding depths of the basement. Heather fought against their beckoning, their fiendish allure, yet the relentless whispers clawed at her sanity. Until one shadow stood apart, silently observing her with burning eyes. Unlike the others, it did not torment or ridicule. It simply watched, earning her cautious trust through its eerie presence. Driven by a desperate curiosity, Heather succumbed to the shadow's allure. She followed its faint form through the winding corridors, her heart pounding in her chest. The house seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, as if it reveled in her impending fate. Finally, they reached the basement, where a grotesque sight awaited her trembling gaze. Hanging from a noose, a lifeless figure swayed, a horrifying reflection of herself. A guttural cry escaped Heather's lips, shattering the fragile remnants of her sanity. She crumbled to her knees, tears streaming down her face, mingling with the darkness that enveloped her. The shadows, once tormentors, now encircled her. Their presence felt like a twisted embrace, a macabre solace in the midst of her despair. Darkness coddled her, swallowing her cries as she surrendered to the numbing abyss. Heather, trapped in the twisted labyrinth of her own mind, faded into a haunting oblivion. The shadows, with their insidious whispers, claimed her as one of their own, an eternal resident in the abyss where the lines between reality and nightmare converged. In a world plagued by darkness, there existed a fearsome monster named Tiberius. Towering over buildings, with gnarled horns and a menacing gaze, he would roam from city to city, striking fear into the hearts of its inhabitants. Tiberius had a ravenous appetite for human flesh, delighting in the terror he sowed with each victim devoured. However, deep within the monstrous exterior, there flickered a tiny ember of humanity. Tiberius was once a man, cursed by a wicked sorceress for his vices and cruelty. The curse turned him into the very monster he had become, bound by his insatiable hunger and consumed by his twisted desires. One fateful night, as Tiberius prowled the dimly lit streets of a city, he happened upon a young girl named Emily. Her innocence and unwavering belief in the goodness of others touched a long-forgotten part of Tiberius' tormented soul. Intrigued by her fearlessness, he decided to spare her life, unable to shake off the strange emotions awakening within him. Haunted by guilt and driven by a newfound desire for redemption, Tiberius resolved to break free from his cursed existence. He sought out the knowledge of a wise old sage who lived in the depths of a hidden forest. The sage, sensing Tiberius' sincerity, agreed to help him on his quest for transformation. Under the sage's guidance, Tiberius embarked on a spiritual journey, delving into his darkest memories and facing the pain he had inflicted upon others. Through introspection and self-reflection, he began to understand the depths of his cruelty and the consequences of his actions. Tiberius realized that his hunger for human flesh was merely a distorted manifestation of his own emotional hunger for connection, love, and acceptance. As Tiberius traversed from city to city, he no longer feasted on the flesh of innocent victims. Instead, he used his monstrous appearance to inspire fear in those who sought to harm others. He became a protector, a guardian of the weak and defenseless, striking fear into the hearts of evildoers. News of the transformed Tiberius spread like wildfire, capturing the imagination of people from all walks of life. They marveled at the monster who had found compassion within himself, striving to make amends for the atrocities of his past. In his tireless journey, Tiberius encountered numerous individuals who had suffered at his hands or feared him still. One by one, he sought forgiveness and offered recompense for the pain he had caused. Some forgave him, recognizing his sincere remorse and efforts to change. Others remained skeptical but acknowledged the transformation within him. Through these encounters, Tiberius began to understand the true meaning of redemption. It wasn't merely erasing the past but actively working to build a better future. He pledged to spend the remainder of his days protecting those he once preyed upon, becoming a symbol of hope and second chances. Over time, Tiberius' monstrous form began to fade, revealing a man of great strength and compassion. His once terrifying visage transformed into one of wisdom and benevolence, earning him the nickname, the Gentle Guardian. People came from far and wide to seek his counsel, to be inspired by his journey, and to witness firsthand the extraordinary power of change. And so, the tale of Tiberius, the monster-turned-protector, became a legend passed down through generations. It served as a reminder that even the darkest souls can find redemption if they are willing to confront their past, seek forgiveness, and embrace the transformative power of love and compassion. I had been living in my new apartment for several months now. While it felt weird and distant, something told me my new house was going to be a safe place for me to live. One night, I was awakened by a loud creaking sound that seemed to be coming from my bedroom. I slowly crept out of bed and went to investigate, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The next evening, the creaking sound returned, but it seemed to be coming from the wall behind my bed. I peered over the edge of my mattress and noticed a strange shape shifting underneath the wall. It almost looked like a human hand, but it was far too transparent to be real. I tried to go back to sleep, but my curiosity got the better of me, and every few minutes, I would carefully glance over at the wall. Suddenly, the shape began to move upward, revealing the body of a small, ghostly figure. It was only now that I saw the ghost's face. A pale, childlike face with empty eyes and a gaping mouth full of darkness. Deep within the forbidden forest stands an abandoned caste. Legend has it that a vengeful spirit driven by madness and jealousy is still trapped within its walls. Centuries ago, a woman named Agatha had fallen deeply in love with a prince named Cassius. Agatha's love for him knows no bounds, and she wouldn't stop at anything just for him to love her, but Cassius's heart already belongs to someone else, a townsgirl named Isabel. As the whole town celebrates the engagement of Cassius and Isabel, Agatha is devising a plan to keep them apart. Driven by jealousy and heartbreak, Agatha plunged a knife into Isabel's heart, forever staining the castle walls with her blood and tears. Agatha thought that she'd finally win Cassius's heart. But the prince, consumed by pain, followed his beloved to the grave, and cursing Agatha to never find peace when she breathes her last. Years passed, and the mansion fell into disrepair, becoming a place shrouded in darkness and mystery. Locals would avoid it, fearful of the tales that echoed through generations. But curiosity got the better of a group of friends one moonlit night. Claire, who has an adventurous spirit, has finally convinced her friends Andrew and Mary to visit the abandoned mansion as a final adventure before going off to college, armed with flashlights and trembling nerves, not knowing the dangers that await them within the castle walls. As they venture deep within the castle walls, they can't help but notice the air growing heavy as silence permeates the scene. Unbeknownst to them, a silent specter is watching their every move. Agatha can't believe her eyes, as she looks at Andrew. Standing in front of her is the spitting image of her love Cassius, her twisted love rekindled once again. As they delve deeper into the mansion, the friends notice strange occurrences happening. Objects moved on their own, whispers echoed through the hallways, and a chilling coldness seeped into their bones. Claire, blinded by her determination, remained resolute in unraveling the mansion's secrets, even as her friends begged her to leave. Agatha, fueled by jealousy and possessiveness, focused her wrath on Claire. She whispered seductive promises of love, knowing that Claire has feelings for Andrew, luring Claire deeper into her web of darkness. As the night goes on, Claire's behavior grew increasingly erratic. Her once joyful demeanor turned sinister, and a newfound obsession with Andrew consumed her. The friends watched in horror as Claire became a vessel for Agatha's tormented spirit. With each minute they stayed inside the castle, Agatha's power grew stronger. She created illusions to manipulate the very fabric of reality. Hell-bent in keeping Andrew trapped within the cast walls. Not wanting to leave Claire, Andrew and Mary looked for a way to free her from the clutches of Agatha. They searched high and low for ways to stop this madness. They accidentally stumbled upon a room and found Agatha's diary, written in its pages her obsession with Cassius and how she killed Isabel. Clearly it was a diary of a madman. As dawn peaks in the horizon, their only hope of escaping is to face the spirit of Agatha. Andrew bravely offered to stay just for Agatha to let Claire and Mary go. But Agatha just laughed mockingly and said no one will leave the castle ever. Meanwhile, Mary searched high and low for Agatha's final resting place, hoping that burning her bones would finally end this nightmare. Desperation fueled the Andrew and Mary's resolve as they realized the magnitude of the threat before them. Andrew still begging for Agatha to let Claire go, a blinding light engulfed the room, and in front of them stood the spirit of Isabel. The mansion trembled, the very fabric of reality shook, and a deafening roar of anger echoed throughout the halls as Agatha saw Isabel's spirit. A battle between the spirits raged as the helpless friends stood in the corner watching, neither side wanting to yield. Andrew and Mary sensed that Agatha's hold on Claire is slipping, tried to encourage her to come back to them. With the last of her willpower, Claire broke free from Agatha's clutches. With a blood-curdling scream, the friends saw Agatha's spirit being dragged to hell. Andrew and Mary rushed to embrace their friend Claire, who is finally out of Agatha's clutches. The mansion, no longer under Agatha's control, began to crumble, its walls crumbling into dust as daylight. As they stepped out into the sunlight, the friends knew that their lives would forever be changed by this experience. Finally free of the obsessive spirit, or are they? In the quiet town of Hollowbrook, an old manor stood tall and foreboding, shrouded in an unsettling aura. Locals whispered of its dark history, its haunted past that defied rational explanation. Intrigued, I decided to delve into the chilling tale that surrounded the manor. Legend had it that a reclusive family once resided within those decaying walls. The patriarch, Mr. Holloway, was a wealthy recluse with an insatiable obsession for the occult. He delved into forbidden rituals, harnessing dark forces that consumed him and his family. Upon entering the manor, a sense of dread instantly engulfed me. Shadows danced along the walls, their sinister waltz captivating yet unnerving. The air was heavy, charged with an unexplainable malevolence. As I explored each room, the oppressive atmosphere intensified. Strange whispers echoed through the empty corridors, growing louder with each passing moment. I stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its door barely ajar. Intrigued, I pushed it open, revealing a study steeped in ancient tomes and occult artifacts. As I skimmed through aged manuscripts, an icy draft sent shivers down my spine. The room fell silent, save for the faint sound of whispers that seemed to emanate from nowhere. Suddenly, the bookshelves trembled, spilling their contents onto the floor with a thunderous crash. Fear consumed me as an invisible force seemed to taunt and toy with my presence. In a panic, I dashed out of the study, seeking solace in the moonlit courtyard. But even there, the haunting persisted. Shadowy figures danced in the moon's ethereal glow, their elongated forms mocking and beckoning me towards an unknown fate. Each night, as the clock struck midnight, the manor would come alive with unearthly sounds. Phantom footsteps echoed through the empty halls, doors creaked open and slammed shut, and anguished cries pierced the silence. Desperate to escape, I felt the invisible grip of an unseen entity tugging at my very soul. Days turned into sleepless nights as the manor's grip tightened around me. Sanity teetered on the precipice of madness. I knew then that the spirits of Hollowbrook Manor were bound by their tragic past, forever condemned to wander its haunted halls. Now, dear readers, I share this tale as a warning. Should you ever come across the forsaken Hollowbrook Manor, resist the temptation to uncover its secrets. For once you cross its threshold, you may find yourself forever trapped in a nightmare realm, where the line between the living and the dead fades into eternal darkness. There's a cult in our town. Every night on November 14th, every year, they gather up 14 unlucky bystanders. From the streets, from homes, from restaurants and bars. Understand it was the chosen, the ones who were picked by utter and pure coincidence and fate. They were tied up and given a drug that paralyzed them but allowed them to speak. Later, they would all be forced to stand in a circle. A blind person was given a gun to shoot one person. The catch is that they're spun around, quite like the game where you're spun around and you need to pin the tail on the beast. They stop whenever they please, and shoot. One person dies, and there is 13 people left. Let me explain the interesting part. The fun part. The thing is, people always make little, small sounds, whether you hear it or not does not matter. Only blind people's senses are amplified when sight is taken away. They can tell by whose breathing it is, even. The blind person is taken away, and usually they're from a high school by then. For some reason, we have a lot of young blind people. I do not know if the cult plays into this. The blind people are judged and isolated. They don't want to hurt whoever hurts them, but if you would be killed and you get to choose. So they can tell who to kill. Then bang, and another casualty. Who am I? Well, I was the person who caught it all on camera and released it into the internet. Now I'm the next blind candidate. Detective Marcus Reed had spent years honing his investigative skills, tirelessly pursuing justice and hunting down the most elusive criminals. His reputation as a relentless pursuer of truth had earned him respect among his peers and struck fear into the hearts of the criminal underworld. But there was one adversary who had always managed to stay one step ahead, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. The city had come to know this killer as the Shadowmaker, a name bestowed upon him due to his uncanny ability to disappear without a trace. His gruesome signature was the mark of a shadow, a chilling reminder of his presence in the darkness. The victims, each one more brutally slain than the last, haunted the nightmares of those who dared to imagine the depths of his cruelty. Marcus had dedicated countless sleepless nights to deciphering the cryptic messages left behind by the Shadowmaker, hoping to gain even the slightest advantage in this deadly game of cat and mouse. Every step he took in pursuit of justice brought him closer to the brink of his own sanity, but he refused to let fear consume him. Now, he stood at the scene of the latest murder, the smell of death permeating the air. The room was a macabre tableau, bathed in crimson hues and cast with long, eerie shadows. The walls bore witness to the killer's artistry, a grotesque tapestry of suffering and terror. As Marcus examined the room, his eyes fell upon a single clue, a scrap of paper delicately placed on a nearby table. It was a taunting message, written in jagged letters with ink that seemed to possess a life of its own. Tick-tock, Detective Reed. The game has just begun. A chill raced down Marcus' spine, his heart quickening in response. The Shadowmaker had grown bolder, now daring to challenge him directly. It was a clear declaration that their paths were destined to intertwine in a final, deadly confrontation. Determined to put an end to the reign of terror, Marcus clutched the scrap of paper, his resolve hardening. With each passing moment, the hunter within him burned brighter, fueling a relentless pursuit that would push him to the very limits of his abilities. The city held its breath, knowing that the clash between these two formidable forces would be cataclysmic, their fates forever entwined in a dance of darkness and light. Satanic themes always gave me the creeps. They really give everyone the creeps. The mere thought of satanic rituals, blood sacrifices and devil worshipping always made my skin crawl. I grew up in a Southern Baptist household, so we always worshipped God and appreciated all the things He's done for us. So just trying to understand why people were crazy enough to worship the devil himself, well, is insane. Over 10 years ago, a story stuck with me. It was told by my mother and my grandparents. In the hills of southern Kentucky, my mother, uncle, and my grandparents went horseback riding on a lone narrow trail. After 2 or 3 miles down the trail, they finally reach an opening. Right in the middle of this opening was a rugged run-down cabin. What they saw next was disturbing. As they all one by one walk in the cabin, the eerie feeling started setting in. Theirs was freshly burnt candles sitting inside a shelf, giant hand-painted prints on the ceiling. And of course, what would a creepy cabin in the woods be without a bright pink pentagram on the floor? The pentagram was freshly painted and covered in blood. Why Grandpa didn't know what to think of the situation. The first thought was some rowdy punk teenagers came through the woods and created this fake ritual scene. But why would any kids or teenagers come out this far out in the woods to do something like that? This cabin was surrounded by hundreds of acres of trees and foliage, and there wasn't any neighbors for a few miles. It just didn't seem plausible. The second theory would have to be that it was a real satanic ritual and there was a group of people trying to conjure up something evil in those woods. After my family searched the cabin, they started feeling uneasy. My grandpa's farm was only a 10 to 15 minute walk from his actual property. Who knows what else these kinds of people will do. My papa immediately called the local police, seeing if there was anything they could do about this whole situation. The only advice the police gave him was they won't bother you unless you bother them. The police could not help, there's nothing they can really do anyway. So after that, my papa would just be very cautious, watching anyone that was lurking in his woods. 10 to 12 years later, it was 2012 and I was 14 years old. I was so intrigued by this story. I asked my papa if we could walk back there. He was also curious and wanted to know what condition the cabin was in, and I just wanted to see if the stories were true. So me and my papa walked through the wooded trail. It really seemed like an eternity. My adrenaline was pumping and I was really wanting to see if all this was true. Finally, we came up to the cabin. And I can confirm that it was all true. The giant gorilla-size handprints, the faded pentagram, it was all there. I even filmed the whole exploration. The only question that remains is, was this done by a group of punk teens vandalizing, or was this a group of people actually conjuring something up? It's up to you to decide. I've always had this fear of elevators. I'm not claustrophobic, it's not the small space that scares me. My fear is simply being locked in by something beyond my control. I live on the 5th floor of an apartment building, and believe me when I say that my phobia has a daily impact on my life. Going up and down those stairs is tiring, and my friend caught the bad end of that last week. I had slept in again, something I do all too often. I heard a ringing, beginning in my dream, and as I opened my eyes and drifted back to reality, I realized the sound was coming from my phone. It was Maria. As I answered the phone with weak hands, I tried to mumble a hello, but nothing came out. Hey. I'm in town if you want to meet me. I did want to, but I did not have the energy to go down 105 steps. Yes, I have counted. When you walk them every day, you count them at least one time. My silence spoke for me, as she replied, please don't tell me you're sleeping at 2 p.m. again. Slightly unfair assessment, it was 1:45 p.m. I found my voice again, "Hey, sorry, yeah I kinda was. Can we meet later? I can't be bothered for the stairs right now, I'm literally finished in town and was about to head home. It's now or never. Please." I couldn't say no to her when she says it like that. She has a specific tone of saying please that she just knows always works on me. I still had that sense of nothing quite feeling real. So I sat up and tried to wake myself a little. Fine, where are you?" "Downstairs." I chatted on the phone for a few minutes whilst I got ready. We hadn't seen each other for a few weeks, with both of us being busy with university work, so I was actually quite excited. Once ready, I stepped out into the hallway, and began my usual routine, making my way to the stairs. I passed the elevators. I do this so often, I don't even think about how much time and energy they could save me. Yet this time, something strange happened. The familiar rumbling of the elevator echoed through the walls as it arrived at my floor. The door opened, spilling the artificial light into the depressingly dim hallway. The gentle, ominous sound of the elevator speaker allowed grainy music to enter an otherwise quiet atmosphere. I could almost make out the song. Almost. I don't know if it was my tiredness, or having my friend right at the bottom, but I felt like it was time to face my phobia head-on. I think I might try the elevator. Wait, really? Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I'll be right here at the bottom, waiting for you. I stepped into the metal box, doubting myself with every step. Even as my hand reached for G, confirming my destination for the ground floor. I was fighting myself to not run right back out. The doors seemed to close slower than they opened, giving me ample time to change my decision. I stayed. With the doors sealed, so was my fate, I knew I could no longer turn back. Just a warning, the signal might out if so, Maria. Hello. The call had ended. I had forgotten that elevators often do that. Not only do they wish to trap you from the outside world physically, but also mentally. I had no way of communicating with Maria, and was left with my own thoughts, all of which were negative. I tried to fight the feeling of dread, trying to not even acknowledge the fact that I was in an elevator. It must have been about a minute in that I realized something was wrong. Elevators were not supposed to take this long. The number above the door indicated that I was still on the 4th floor. But I could feel the elevator moving, or was that just my anxiety making everything spin? I pressed G again. I don't know how many times I pressed it before switching to the open doors button. Neither seemed to do anything to help my shaky breathing from speeding up. It felt as though the air I was breathing was giving me no oxygen at all, suffocating on air. The familiar rumbling of the elevator echoed through the walls as it arrived at my floor. The door opened, spilling the artificial light into the depressingly dim hallway. The gentle, ominous sound of the elevator speaker allowed grainy music to enter an otherwise quiet atmosphere. I could almost make out the song. Almost. I don't know if it was my tiredness, or having my friend right at the bottom, but I felt like it was time to face my phobia head-on. A few seconds passed, a few seconds longer than I'd like before someone responds to something like that. But I kept taking deep breaths, knowing that he was probably sending somebody out to fix it. The next sound from the speaker broke me. It's too late. The music came back to life, unaware of the terror within me. A cheery, happy melody, failing to make me feel anything similar. I pressed every button I could. I tried to call, text, and video chat with Maria. Every action I took felt slow, although I'm sure all of this happened within the span of 10 seconds. At the end of it, I collapsed to the metal ground. I looked up at the number. 3. We had gone down a floor. That was good, I thought, until I felt everything stop. I didn't even realize it was moving until it had stopped. The change in velocity was noticeable. I would have felt relieved if it weren't for the fact that the third floor of this building doesn't exist. At least, if it does, then I'm not sure how to access it. The elevator has no "free" button, and there are no doors to exit the stairwell on the third floor. Even on the exterior of the building, there is a tall blank space on the wall between the windows of the second and fourth floors. The familiar rumbling of the elevator echoed through the walls as it arrived at my floor. The door opened, spilling the artificial light into the depressingly dim hallway. The gentle, ominous sound of the elevator speaker allowed grainy music to enter an otherwise quiet atmosphere. I could almost make out the song. Almost. I don't know if it was my tiredness, or having my friend right at the bottom, but I felt like it was time to face my phobia head-on. Perhaps some fears are rational. The longer I stared at the silhouette, the more I seemed to see. It wasn't motionless, it seemed to move slightly up and down. I would say it was breathing if the pattern was more regular. This was more like a grotesque quaking. A dripping sound began, as a puddle of liquid emerged from the darkness. Perhaps some fears are. The power went out, as the lights flickered away, the gentle crackle of the speakers vanished. I could hear only my breathing, and the dripping. I did not know whether this thing was in front of me, or far away from me. I listened as carefully as I could, listening for any kind of footsteps, but the dripping was so irregular that it was impossible to ignore it and let it blend into the background. The darkness seemed thick, like I could cut right through it. If I had a knife on me, I'd probably have tried. At least I'd be protecting myself in the process. I didn't know what to expect. Every small movement I made felt like it could be last. I heard a whirring, and the doors close. I had never felt so relieved to be locked in by something beyond my control. The elevator descended again, and I had a moment to reflect on what had just happened. The lights of the elevator remained off, but the red glow from the display above the door remained. I watched as the numbers blinked from 2 to 1 to G. I was waiting for the doors to open and to be met with the familiar, beaming face of Maria. As light from the lobby poured into the elevator, I saw that the lobby was empty. As my phone reconnected to the network, it got multiple notifications at once. "You're taking a while, is everything okay? Hello? Is everything okay? I'm gonna come upstairs and find you."